we want to give you an opportunity, if you know her, if you indeed know where she is, to tell us right now at the beginning of the day.
I can't remember if I added her or she added me. I'm not 100% sure.
I honestly can't remember. I've been drinking. We'd all been drinking.
I have a habit of accepting anyone who tries, you know what I mean, regardless of whether the name rings a bell or anything. I've got like 2,000 odd people.
We're asking you if you can explain what's happened.
I honestly cannot explain that.
"15-year-old Kayleigh Haywood lived with her family in a village called Measham in Leicestershire, England. Kayleigh was part of a big family and was close to all her brothers and sisters. Her mother Stephanie said that she was like a second mum to her younger siblings. She was bubbly and popular amongst her group of friends. Outgoing, friendly and positive, Kayleigh's head teacher said she had a real determination to be successful in life. As is typical of most teenagers, Kayleigh spent a lot of time on her phone and social media. She was always active on Facebook and loved sharing pictures and statuses with friends and family. Friends she knew from school and new people she was meeting and engaging with online. Friday 13th, 2015. Just after 3 p.m, Kayleigh sent a message to her friend Katie saying she wouldn't be able to see her later as she said she would be staying at her aunt's house. That evening, Kayleigh asked her father Martin for a lift to Ipstock, around a 10-minute drive away from her home in Measham. She told him she was going to meet her friend and would be staying over that weekend. Martin dropped Kayleigh off outside Ipstock Community College at around 6 p.m. that evening. All seemed well, and the following morning Kayleigh was in contact with her parents asking if she could stay at her friend's house for another night. After that, they heard nothing. For someone that was glued to her mobile phone, this unnerved her parents. They reassured themselves that she was just busy with her friend and remained as calm as they could. But on Sunday the 15th, what turned out to be Kayleigh's smashed and broken iPhone was found on a street by a member of the public. Upon finding the phone, the man called the last number in Kayleigh's call history. This number belonged to one of Kayleigh's friends. As soon as the phone call ended, Kayleigh's friend phoned Stephanie, Kayleigh's mother, and told her what had happened. Stephanie was shocked, as the friend that had phoned her was the same friend Kayleigh had said she'd been staying with, but this friend hadn't actually heard from her in days. There was nothing on Kayleigh's social media, and nobody had spoken to or seen her. Her family knew they had to get the police involved, and she was reported missing later that Sunday. Detective Chief Superintendent David Sandall of Leicestershire Police was leading the investigation, and the case started to move very quickly.
I'm appealing for your help in trying to locate Kayleigh Haywood, a 15-year-old girl who's currently missing. This is a message for Kayleigh herself. Please contact your family or the police. We just want to check that you are safe and well. If anybody else has seen Kayleigh since Friday the 13th of November, then we're asking you to contact the police.
Schoolgirl Kayleigh Haywood. Her disappearance is described as totally out of character. The 15-year-old left home in Measham on Friday evening. She was dropped off a few miles away at Ipstock Community College, where she'd been a former pupil. Kayleigh spoke to her parents on the phone on Saturday morning, but there's been no contact from her since.
Over 400 police officers were working on the searches and interviews. Kayleigh's laptop was seized and her smashed but still working phone was taken in for an inspection too. Police began to check through all her messages and social media interactions and posts. They asked about Kayleigh's state of mind when she left the family home on Friday, but by all accounts, she seemed to be her usual and happy self. Nothing seemed amiss. Stephanie said she knew something bad had happened to her daughter, and despite Kayleigh's father Martin and the police doing their best to reassure her, Stephanie's gut was telling her that something was deeply wrong. Tragically, just 2 days later, this missing persons case would escalate.
As inquiries have been completed, we have become increasingly concerned that she may have come to harm. And today, we have told the family that we are treating her disappearance as a murder inquiry.
Kayleigh told multiple stories about who she was going to visit that weekend, but one of her friends gave some compelling new evidence. Kayleigh had confided in this friend and told her that she had started talking to someone on Facebook. She said she was going to visit him on Friday the 13th and asked if her friend would go with her. However, shortly after the plan was set in motion, Kayleigh cancelled and said she was no longer going. Monday 16th, 2 days since anyone had heard from Kayleigh. To the public and media's shock, the police announced that 2 people had been arrested on suspicion of kidnap after a property in Ibstock had been searched. Over the next couple of days, searches were carried out across the whole of Ibstock and surrounding areas. Items of clothing confirmed to be Kayleigh's were found scattered over a 10-mile radius. Less than 24 hours after the 2 suspects had been arrested on suspicion of kidnap, they were rearrested, this time on suspicion of the murder of Kayleigh Haywood. On the 18th of November at around 10 p.m, the police made a tragic discovery.
Police searching for missing teenager Kayleigh Haywood have found a body in a field in Leicestershire in the UK. The discovery was made at around 10 p.m. last night, although formal identification is yet to take place.
What happens now? Well, police will move forward with their investigation. As you say, they have 2 men in their 20s in custody. They've now been arrested on suspicion of murder. And a key line of inquiry will be Kayleigh's Facebook page, with friends and family both saying that she was speaking to a man online in the run-up to her disappearance.
It was confirmed that it was Kayleigh Haywood's body. She had been beaten to death. Her jaw and nose were both broken, and her body was covered in injuries and self-defence wounds. There were 42 breaks to her body, 16 breaks to her face, and 6 lacerations to the back of her head. The post-mortem examination also determined that she had been subjected to a horrifying sexual assault. The suspects still in custody on suspicion of her murder were Luke Harlow and Stephen Biedman.
I am Detective Chief Superintendent David Sandel, Head of Crime for Leicestershire Police. A 28-year-old man tonight has been charged with the murder of Kayleigh Haywood. Stephen Biedman of George Avenue in Ibstock has been charged with murder and a sexual offence. Luke Harlow, 27, of George Avenue, Ibstock, has been charged with sexual offences.
But how and why had this come to happen and unravel so quickly? In the months leading up to Kayleigh's murder, Luke Harlow had attempted to contact a string of underage girls, the youngest being just 13 years old. In some of the messages, he spoke of wanting to kidnap the girls and keep them as slaves. He said, "Having sex with drunk and conscious girls is my favourite." On the 31st of October 2015, less than a month before Kayleigh's body was found, Kayleigh had received a friend request on Facebook from Luke Harlow, which she accepted. As soon as she did, she got a message from him. "Hey, how are you?" Kayleigh replied, "Fine. Who are you?" Within about 10 minutes they had exchanged phone numbers and went on to send over 2,600 messages back and forth over the course of 2 weeks. Kayleigh and Luke both initially lied about their ages. Kayleigh made herself 19 and Luke told her he was a year younger. However, Kayleigh quickly admitted that she was only 15 years old, but this didn't deter Luke Harlow, and he continued to shower her with attention and compliments over the next 2 weeks. He said they needed to keep their relationship a secret, and the messages got more graphic and explicit as the days went on. Luke asked Kayleigh if she would meet him at his house and they could watch movies and have food together. Luke quickly added more to this plan, and he asked Kayleigh if she wanted to get drunk with him, as he would be buying vodka for both of them. They made a plan to meet on Friday the 13th of November, 2 weeks since they had started talking. Luke told Kayleigh to lie to her family and friends about where she was going and who she was meeting, so that their relationship could remain a secret. It is unknown exactly what happened on that Friday night, but Kayleigh's friend said she had woken to a message sent from Kayleigh's iPhone just after 9 p.m. on Friday night. The message simply said, "Help." Her friend texted her back and asked her what she'd meant. She said she got a message straight back saying, "I meant hello." Her friend described the messages as unusual and said they didn't sound like her. Sometime on Sunday morning, Kayleigh asked her parents if she could stay over at her friend's house for one more night, and they agreed, believing she was safe and with someone they knew. At some point during the Saturday evening, Luke ran out of alcohol and went to his neighbours to get some more. Stephen Biedmann, a landscape gardener, lived just a stone's throw away from Luke, but he had no alcohol either. Both men went to the shops for more drinks, and then both returned to Luke's house. There was no mention of Stephen's name in any of the chat logs or messages between Luke and Kaylee, so it is fairly certain she had no knowledge that Stephen even existed. The events that transpired in the following hours are nothing short of horrific. In the late evening of Saturday night, neighbours heard banging and crashing sounds coming from inside the house. Kaylee, having been plied with alcohol, was sexually assaulted by Harlow. She fled the house without her shoes, naked from the waist down, being chased down by Biedman. A witness whose house overlooked the pathway near Harlow's home looked outside his window that night and saw what he initially thought was a police officer attempting to restrain a young girl by pinning her to the ground. He then assumed it was a young couple having some sort of domestic argument as he saw the pair get up and walk away holding hands. He said he didn't see or hear anything from them again. Stephen Biedman marched Kaylee to a car park where he subjected her to a horrifying sexual assault. He then proceeded to walk with Kaylee to a park area. Kaylee managed to break away and start running, but Biedman caught up with her and Kaylee hit Biedman in the face with a brick. Biedman then picked up some brick and beat her to death with it. The wounds on Biedman's face showed just how hard Kaylee had fought until the end. As soon as she was reported missing just a day later, police quickly discovered the messages between Luke and Kaylee. Luke Harlow's property was then searched. Police saw that the house was in chaos and some of Kaylee's belongings were still there. Luke Harlow was immediately brought in for questioning and placed under arrest for kidnap. He admitted that Kaylee had been at his house and said that he knew it was wrong because of her age.
Yeah, well, I obviously feel bad, don't I?
Why do you feel bad?
Because she's too young.
For what?
For coming and staying my mind for starting out.
And what else?
And other stuff.
What's the other stuff?
When did you become friends?
On Facebook.
How did that come about?
I can't remember if I added her or she added me. I'm not 100% sure. But like, I've got loads of people on it, and I have a habit of accepting anyone who tries, you know what I mean, regardless of whether the name rings a bell or anything. I've got like 2,000 odd people in it. But I'm not sure whether she added me or I added her, but basically as soon as we were friends on here, we just started talking, just like, oh hey, how are you? And then like, where are you from? Blah,
How
blah,
long
blah.
ago was that?
Not long ago, only about, I'd say roughly a month.
Right.
But he said he had woken up the next morning to find her missing and assumed that she had gone home during the night. He told police that he and his neighbour Stephen Biedman had gone to go and buy more alcohol and returned to the house together. Harlow then claimed that he went to bed drunk, leaving Kaylee and Biedman alone. With this, the hunt was on to find Stephen Biedman. He was found at a family member's house and was swiftly brought in for questioning and arrested on suspicion of kidnap.
We want to give you an opportunity, if you know her, and if you indeed know where she is, to tell us right now at the beginning of the day.
No, I don't.
You don't know where she is?
I don't know where she is. I met her Saturday night at 8. At 7:30, 8 o'clock. I've known about 4 hours.
Police were immediately taken aback by the scratches covering Biedman. His face was a picture that instantly spoke 1,000 words. Biedman also denied knowing where Kaylee was and said he had left Luke Harlow and her together on the sofa in Harlow's house. Both men said they had been drinking excessively, and a lot of the night was either hazy or a total blackout. However, between the messages, the witness statements and the marks on Biedman's face, it was clear for all to see that both Harlow and Biedman were the people responsible for what had happened to Kaylee Haywood. Police also later found images of child abuse on Biedman's computers. A series of interviews later, Stephen Biedman admitted that he and Kaylee had left the house together that night.
Pretty much walking because I shouted. I must have scared her. I must have.
So is she resisting you at this point, or is she just walking?
No, not when she's walking, no.
Okay. Are you having to control her by hold her, or is she walking independently?
By this point, she's walking independently.
But up until that point?
No.
And how are you managing to control her?
Just pulling her out.
By your hand?
Yeah.
Alright, okay. Are you using anything else? Is
No.
it just your presence? Is there any weapons?
No weapons.
You're not doing anything, so what's happening? in the
I
house?
honestly can't remember. I've been drinking. We'd all been drinking.
See, the issue is, she's run out, possibly, with her phone, without her trousers, and there's a complete, as you've described, disarray in the flat. The speakers are over.
So there's obviously been a struggle.
Well, that's the implication, but we're asking you if you can explain what's happened.
I honestly cannot explain that.
He asked investigators if he could talk with his appropriate adult. He then finally told the police where Kayleigh was. When officers finally found Kayleigh's body, it was so damaged that the police could not allow Stephanie and Martin to see their daughter in that state. Instead, they arranged for the pair to hold Kayleigh's hand, but nothing more. Kayleigh's body was identified using dental records. On the 20th of November 2015, shortly after being arrested, Leicestershire police announced that Stephen Biedman had been charged with rape and murder, and Luke Harlow had been charged with grooming and 2 counts of sexual activity with a child. In January of 2016, Kayleigh's funeral was held. Bows were tied around trees in Kayleigh's favourite colour, purple. Hundreds of mourners packed out the streets of Measham as her coffin was carried on a white horse-drawn carriage. Outpourings of grief, sadness and anger for what had happened was apparent in the whole community. Luke Harlow and Stephen Biedman eventually pled guilty to the crimes, but the prosecution weren't satisfied with these pleas and put another charge of false imprisonment forward for both men. Both of them pled not guilty to this charge, and so, with the blessing of Kayleigh's family, prosecutor Miranda Moore QC took it to trial. In June 2016, the trial of Stephen Biedman and Luke Harlow began in Nottingham Crown Court, with Judge Mrs. Justice Cox presiding. Prosecutor Miranda Moore argued that the way in which Luke Harlow's house was found by the police showed obvious signs of a struggle and that Kayleigh had been held there against her will. Things were smashed and broken, items were knocked over, and the house was in disarray. She also said that Luke Harlow's claims of being asleep and having no idea what had happened to Kayleigh didn't add up either. Luke's glasses had been smashed, presumably due to Kayleigh fighting him off. The state that the house was in was further backed up by neighbours, who said they had heard banging and crashing sounds, and this likely would have woken Harlow if he was asleep. Stephen Biedman simply said that Kayleigh was free to leave the house at any time she wanted. After a painful 2-week trial for the family and friends of Kayleigh Haywood, the jury had reached their verdict. Both Luke Harlow and Stephen Biedman were found guilty of false imprisonment, alongside their previous guilty pleas. Luke Harlow was sentenced to 12 years for meeting a child following sexual grooming, 2 counts of sexual activity with a child, attempting to meet 2 other 15-year-old girls following sexual grooming, and false imprisonment. Stephen Biedman was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 35 years for the false imprisonment, rape and murder of Kayleigh Haywood. Justice Cox said of the case, "The pain, terror and anguish that would have been suffered by this young girl is truly horrifying to contemplate. I am entirely satisfied on the evidence that she would have been acutely distressed and frightened. It seems to me this is every parent's worst nightmare. It is absolutely clear to me, absolutely no blame can be attached to them for what happened." In April 2021, it was announced that Stephen Biedman had died in prison. In a statement, a spokesperson said, "The prison service cannot confirm the cause of death, which is rightly a matter for the coroner." Following the tragic events that unfolded on November 13th, Kayleigh's family set up Kayleigh's Cause, which would campaign to increase the minimum age for use of social media websites to 16. The family wants site operators to request some sort of legal document, like a passport or driver's license, to prove a child's age, even if they have permission of their parents to open the account. Alongside this, a short film entitled Kayleigh's Love Story was created by Leicestershire Police and Affixus Films. It aims to highlight the dangers of speaking to strangers online and raises awareness for the Cease campaign, commitment to eradicate abuse and sexual exploitation. With the permission of Kayleigh's family, the film reenacted some of the events that transpired during the last 14 days of Kayleigh's life. It went on to receive numerous awards and has proven to be Leicestershire Police's most successful campaign. It has now been seen by thousands of schoolchildren across the country and millions more across the world online, making sure that people become aware of Kayleigh's story. I've left a link to this video alongside some other resources in the description box below.
We are determined that Kayleigh lives on, and not just in our hearts. We want to help and protect children, today and in the future. When the police asked us last December if they could make this film about Kayleigh, we didn't hesitate to give them our total support. We wanted this film made. It serves us as a warning to children and to parents of the very real dangers of online grooming. We want every child aged 11 and upwards to see this film, both in this country and abroad, because this film is our beautiful daughter's tragic legacy. Thank you.